Even just keeping up with new game launches is basically a full-time job at this stage, and this is really starting to hurt us. I'm about to read a quote, but you need to know who it's from. "I see studios going out of business because their games are failing to reach their target audiences. The discovery system is more broken now than I've ever seen it in my decades in the industry." Now, that quote comes from Ichiro Lam, who helped establish Steam Labs, which is Valve's experimental system for making sure that you're actually presented with games that you'll care about and might even enjoy. But the systems are not working. Not on Steam, not on consoles, and not for you. You are right now missing out on games that you would love, and it's because the industry literally can't catch up with the reality of games and audiences in 2026. And what it means is, yes, studios are going out of business and all of those things that suck from the business side, but it also means that your enjoyment of gaming is being throttled. And it's all because of one thing: discoverability being broken. Valve made a change recently. On May 18th, they overhauled the Steam tag system, which are, of course, those categories that appear under a game's profile, things like stealth or first person. They rolled out new tags to address emerging markets, like the growth of wuxia games from Chinese devs, while removing some that were just too generic, like drama or blood. Yeah, game contains blood. The thing you need to know is these tags are at the core of how Steam gets the right games in front of you. Developers set tags at launch, and players can suggest new ones, and then Steam feeds all of that into one big old algorithm. If you play a bunch of games with a regular combination of tags, then Steam knows how to sell you games. And I think no one knows that better than Hooded Horse CEO Tim Bender. You may not have heard of Hooded Horse before. If you've heard of games like Manor Lords, they have an astounding hit rate. Almost everything they touch ends up being a banger. Their CEO Tim Bender recently called this algorithmic solution, quote, excellent. I think we can all see why it would be. Hooded Horse very much is involved in publishing strategy games. So that means the games they publish share loads of similar audiences, which works perfectly for how Steam operates. But the thing is, we know that it doesn't always work perfectly, and Steam knows it doesn't always work. That's why Steam created Steam Labs to test new discoverability tools. It's why in last November we told you about this kind of neat thing that Steam has done, where they have personalized recommendation calendars so you don't miss anything. Of course, that's only useful if you actually know to go and look at it. But the point is, you are missing things, and finding a new game in Steam is a bit of a nightmare. And as we just learned from the quote at the top, even someone who worked on Steam's discoverability systems agrees that they're broken. Right now, there are over 15,000 games in Steam with 80% plus player review scores and 1,000 plus players, but which have not made enough money to recoup their development costs. That is Lam's analysis of Steam's greatest failing here. They have great games that are proven hits. They have more than 100 million monthly users, but almost none of those users are actually buying these games, and that means the developers are struggling to survive, let alone make more games. And it can't just be that everyone's only on Steam to play Dota or Counter-Strike. It more suggests that Steam simply isn't showing these games to enough people for developers to sustainably exist. And remember, it's Steam's work selling your game that is the whole reason and justification for developers paying the larger 30% cut. Is Steam just bad at this? No, not really. Steam, as Lam puts it, is, quote, miles ahead of every other media platform. But I also think, and I say this with love, that's like saying they're the tallest hobbit. The problem is that Steam and every other storefront are basically just the bottom of a funnel. He goes on to say, nobody browses Steam for fun. That's a damning read in the state of discoverability and the limits that every game developer is working within. The person watching right now might say that that is wrong. You might say that you go through your discovery queue, that you do check every email about your Steam wishlist, and that you're even using the follow system that a lot of people don't really understand the point of. That's all well and good, but if that's you, you're a power user. For everyone else, Steam is where they go to buy a game and launch the game. Selling games is more often than not something that happens somewhere else. Running this channel, me and the team have always noticed a funny little thing where almost any time we have like a video featuring footage of just about any game, no matter how popular, maybe with a few exceptions, we're almost guaranteed to have at least one comment along the lines of, "I've never heard of this." And sometimes it doesn't even matter how many Jeff Keighley showcases the damn thing has been in. It doesn't matter how much it's been streamed on Twitch or how many millions got spent marketing it. Someone won't know about it. And of course, to a degree, that's understandable, that's normal, and that's impossible to completely solve. But what it does reflect is there are more games than ever. They're all competing for your attention, and that's a little bit of a problem because other things are going on. The gaming press that used to highlight new games has just been completely gutted. Per a recent study, 64% of people learn about new games from YouTube. That pretty much does match like my experience as well, but the thing is, YouTube is a platform built on whatever will be the most engaging. Even, say, the specialists, channels like Indie Game Joe, are running into the same fundamental problem with how games get sold, that the systems aren't selling you the right ones, and that means that people aren't buying them. And partially, it's a problem Steam's very own tag system reinforces, and it's one that many algorithmic systems reinforce, and that is bubbles. And that's where I go back to Tim Bender, because he's probably doing brilliantly out of Steam's tag system. Hooded Horse publish management and strategy games that are almost always well received. If you've bought one, then you'll probably want more, and Steam will serve you exactly that. But that's a bubble, a strategy game bubble, and maybe even one as niche as a Hooded Horse bubble. It's self-reinforcing. It applies to every type of game, and it means that most people will never really know about anything outside of their bubble, even if it may be perfect for them. Because funnily enough, Steam only knows what it knows. It doesn't have all the other context of you. And as Game Discover Co., which is a brilliant newsletter, put it from the dev side, shouting into the void if you've got the wrong underlying concept won't scale a thing. Point basically being, you have to play the algorithm. And it may not be that a developer's game concept is like the wrong underlying concept to sell to other humans. No, it's just, it may not play well to how Steam works. And the trouble is these algorithms are easily gamed by hyper-popular viral titles or cheap co-op games that do, as we very much see, skew the sales charts. And those cheap games are part of an even bigger problem here. And that's that even if you do find an audience, getting them to actually buy your game is harder than ever. People like Indie Game Joe are an evolution of the old preview system, which was the same logic behind why, say, Steam pages go up long before a page launches. They're basically building up the hours of brand exposure that you need before you'll consider buying a game. That's ultimately what it ends up like when you crunch the data. They're basically making sure you've got at least one hook to pull you back in. A Steam wishlist is meant to be that trigger, firing on launch day or whenever a sale hits. But actually, Steam wishlists are nowhere near as effective as they used to be. You see, once upon a time, a wishlist was the single most important thing that a developer would need for a PC launch. Now it's basically a crapshoot. And as Game Discover Co.'s data suggests, for most games the conversion rate is 0.15 times your wish lists. It can drop to 0.1 if the game costs more than $10, and without outlets backing it or some big hype behind it, that number really isn't climbing. And that ratio used to be quite a bit higher in the past. And what it basically means is that the more, well, you know the classic thing of if you over-optimize just around one metric, the metric ends up becoming useless? Turns out that every dev was probably right in their own case to say wishlist in Steam. But if now everyone is wishlisting in Steam, then the actual utility of a wishlist decreases and decreases to the point where you're simply adding games to a wishlist and forgetting that they exist. And of course, the more that happens, the less a wishlist is a useful signal from Valve's perspective, which almost certainly means it's even harder for them to suggest good games for you. There's a world where it could all come off as, the damn consumers, they're not buying our games even though they should. It's their fault. Terrible consumers, blaming the customer. Now, in a very narrow sense, a bit of that's true. People are actually buying less games. According to Circana, more than 60% of US players buy 2 or fewer games per year, so that's kind of rough. And even when people do buy, the data suggests that 62% of hardcore players aren't actually paying full price. Now, that's for every game. Big AAAs and small indies alike. Of course, means the wishlist button in Steam is really more of a just wait for discount button these days. That problem won't be fixed unless the actual problem is a bit better, which, is the entire global economy getting realigned very quickly. because obviously any blame the customer argument dies as soon as you think about the world and context that customer lives in. But the real problem's deeper. It would be easy to just say, hey, watch this video, get hyped up to look at more games, for me to say, you're all staying in your bubbles and the algorithms keep reinforcing the bubbles so you're trapped. It's all a bit like when you politely accept like a nice gift from a relative where suddenly, you do that once and now that's the only type of gift they'll ever get you because guess what? They know it worked once. The idea basically being here that it's kind of on you to make the effort to go and see more. It's hard to actually do that. And that's the real deeper problem, because the work of helping people push out of their bubbles is mostly happening away from storefronts. Lamb is not an unbiased guy here. His own tool, which is called We Love Every Game, that recommends Steam games to you, and there are many other tools like that. There's Ludicine, which matches you with expert recommendations. Basically, it's a bit like the classic role of like game criticism. There's Nodal, which is a genuinely slick visual system that lets you wander through related Steam tags, starting from games you already like. Every one of them links straight to a store page, so you can click through and you can buy on the spot. But of course, you need to know about those systems. You need to show up and actually engage with them. They're little bolt-ons. They're not actually something going on in Steam. And remember, if you're regularly using your discovery queue or you're checking out the personalized calendar, then you're a Steam power user, right? So in a world where people aren't using the Steam tools that exist, asking people to go off Steam to use other tools is just completely unrealistic. So for the vast majority of people, they're not breaking free of the algorithm, and that means that the algorithm and the store need to evolve. They need to be better, and I truly think the health of the games industry, of games as art, games as a hobby, I think it basically depends on this. We've covered a lot of ground in this video, but there's one wee bit that really just stood out in my head. I imagine it did for yours as well, and it's the quote about people not browsing Steam for fun. Now, of course, if nobody browses Steam for fun, then Steam has got to make sure that you don't have to browse at all. Now, Valve's attempt to overhaul the Steam tag system is exactly the type of change Lamb meant when he said that games are, quote, failing to reach their target audiences. And that's because changing how audiences behave, or somehow just handing players more money, is far harder than the real issue, which is, just fixing the store. And a fixed store is one where the games you love finally find you. And it's one where the people who make those games get to survive. So what should Valve do? I think they should radically reinvest in the Steam store. I've literally been a Steam user for its entire lifespan. Of course, Half-Life 2. But let's not kid ourselves. In many ways, it's a piece of shit. Like, the actual store browsing experience is fucking awful. And you should see what it's like from the developer side, trying to upload assets to the Steam store. It is an arcane, insane process that totally looks, the Steam backend for developers literally looks like it's 15 or 20 years in the past. Pure old Web 2.0 with a little hint of Web 1.0 vibes just floating around. It is so bad. Now, the actual Steam app itself, no matter what you run it on, if it involves page loads, browsing about the place, it performs horribly. If the basics of clicking around different tabs and doing all of those things within the Steam store, if that feels shit, people will browse games less. Web tech has came on so much, and no major piece of consumer technology that is used by hundreds of millions of people should run as routinely poorly as the Steam store does. I really hope they fix it. If they do, it'll be good for customers, it'll be good for devs, and it would be them justifying their 30%, which is what I think they should be doing. You should work to earn your keep. I think Valve needs to do more here. But I don't want to just turbo doom. Look, I am rooting for their success here. I want this shit to go well. And there is a really cool story that I think you should hear. Now, you may have noticed the new 007 game, it sold like 1.5 million copies in its first day. It is a non-live service, single-player game without all that bullshit stuff. You might think about, say, the Capcom games, where, yes, there can be performance bullshit, but with the likes of Resi, we just have had all these examples of a company can just make a really good game, put it out in the market, people will buy it, and it doesn't have to be a live service. Well, a big publisher, one who tried to start making super games and do all sorts of live servicey bullshit, has pretty much went about facing their plan. The more AAA publishers that turn away from that kind of thing, the better for the industry, the better for just creativity, and of course, the better for us as customers and people who enjoy games as art. If you want to know what's the deal there, check out this video next.